moments in life when God speaks to your spirit, moments when the Spirit of God whispers warnings into your soul. These are not ordinary warnings. They are not the kind of words you hear and dismiss. These are divine alerts that come to protect you, to preserve you, and to guide you along the path He has designed for your life. One of the most challenging realities in life is understanding that not everyone who shares your bloodline has your best interest at heart. Sometimes God allows you to be around people who love you, but He also warns you about certain family members whose presence in your life can stunt your growth, destroy your peace, or even derail the destiny that God has placed within you. I want to talk to you about 7 types of family members God warns you to stay away from. These are not merely opinions. These are spiritual truths rooted in wisdom. Understanding these warnings is not about judgment. It is about protection. It is about learning the art of discernment. It is about learning how to navigate relationships with clarity and purpose, knowing that your destiny is more important than family approval. The first type of family member God warns you to stay away from is the criticizer. This is the person who is never satisfied with anything you do. No matter how hard you try, no matter how well you perform, they will always find fault. Their words are not just negative, they are corrosive. They plant seeds of doubt in your mind. They will ask questions like, "Are you sure you can do this? Or do you really think you are ready for that?" Every word they speak is designed to undermine your confidence, not out of concern, but because of their own insecurities. God warns us to protect our hearts from constant criticism, even if it comes from someone who claims to love us. You cannot grow when someone's negativity surrounds you. You cannot ascend when someone's doubts chain you down. The second type is the manipulator. This family member knows how to twist situations to their advantage. They use guilt, pressure, and sometimes even feigned concern to control you. You may feel trapped in their demands, feeling obligated to fulfill every whim, every expectation, because after all, they are family. But God warns that these chains are not His will for your life. You are not called to live enslaved by the agendas of others. The manipulator will drain your time, your energy, and even your spiritual focus. They create confusion where clarity should reign. And when your purpose is delayed, it is often because of manipulation that you could not see or confront. The third type is the destructive influencer. This is a family member whose lifestyle choices and habits are a direct contradiction to the principles of God. They may live in rebellion, dishonesty, or immorality, and somehow expect you to conform to their chaos. They ridicule your morals and diminish your faith, subtly suggesting that success, peace, and godly living are illusions. God warns you to stay away from such influences because your life is a reflection of your choices. You cannot rise above the darkness while standing in it. You cannot embrace destiny while immersed in compromise. You must learn to step back and preserve your spiritual integrity, even if that means creating distance. The fourth type is the energy vampire. You know the ones I am talking about. These family members thrive on your attention, your help, your resources, and even your emotional strength, but they give nothing back. They leave you exhausted, burdened, and frustrated. They are never satisfied. They expect and expect and expect. And the danger is subtle. They may wear the mask of love, but the reality is draining. God warns that your energy is sacred, your peace is sacred. And there are times when saying no is not disobedience, but obedience to your own divine calling. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and those who are energy vampires will ensure your cup is perpetually empty unless you take a stand. The fifth type is the jealous sibling or cousin. This is the person who cannot celebrate your success because it highlights their failures. They will smile to your face, but inside envy and resentment are at work. God warns that jealousy is destructive not only to relationships but to destiny. It can lead to sabotage, gossip, and unnecessary conflict. You may think you can reason with them, but the truth is, their heart is not open to your growth. Deku. You cannot force someone to rejoice over your blessings, and you must learn to protect your vision from their shadow. The sixth type is the liar and betrayer. This is one of the most painful types, because the betrayal comes from a place where trust should be strongest. They will twist your words, disclose your secrets, and compromise your confidence for personal gain. God warns that trust is sacred, and when trust is broken repeatedly, you are called to remove yourself from the orbit of that betrayal. Sometimes family can be toxic not because of malice alone, but because of betrayal hidden behind love. And when that betrayal touches your destiny, your calling, your relationships, or your reputation, God says, protect my child. It is not hatred to walk away from a liar. It is wisdom. Finally, the seventh type is the control freak or oppressor. This is the family member who seeks to dominate your life, dictate your choices, and force their opinions upon your path. They will interfere in your career, in your relationships, and even in your spiritual journey. God warns that such oppression is a form of spiritual bondage. It limits your potential, it clouds your judgment, and it can lead you to compromise the destiny God has placed inside of you. You were not created to live under someone else's rule. You were created to rise, to lead, to fulfill a unique purpose. Sometimes the love of God requires you to step away, not out of anger, but out of necessity. I want you to understand something. Setting boundaries with family is not a rejection of God or His principles. It is, in fact, obedience to God. You cannot allow the mistakes, the sins, the control, the envy, or the negativity of a family member to define your life. You cannot allow familiarity to blind you to spiritual danger. God's warnings are there because He knows the power of influence. He knows how easily you can be drawn into patterns that delay your blessings. You cannot allow the mistakes. You can only drawn into patterns that delay your blessings. He knows how easily you can be wounded, distracted, or diverted from the plan He has for your life. And when God says, stay away, He is not asking you to hate. He is asking you to protect. He is asking you to preserve your peace. He is asking you to embrace wisdom. And when you embrace this wisdom, you will find that God begins to shift your life in ways you could not imagine. You will experience freedom. You will experience clarity. You will experience divine alignment. You will see doors open that were previously closed. And obstacles that seemed insurmountable will crumble because you chose to obey the warnings of God. Your calling, your destiny, and your peace are too valuable to leave in the hands of those who would diminish them. God has placed you on a path, and He has given you a mind to discern, a heart to feel, and a spirit to guide you. He has given you the responsibility to guard your life against those who would harm it, even if those people are tied to you by blood. Blood does not guarantee blessing. Obedience to God guarantees fruitfulness. And sometimes obedience to God requires courage. The courage to walk away, the courage to distance yourself, the courage to say, I will love you from afar, but I will not allow you to harm my destiny. The beauty of God's warning is that it is preventative. It is not punitive. It is not about punishment or condemnation. It is about protection, preservation, and preparation. When you choose to recognize the 7 types of family members to stay away from, and you set godly boundaries, you are stepping into a life of purpose. You are stepping into a life of peace. You are stepping into a life where your calling is unhindered, where your gifts are maximized, and where your influence is elevated. Remember, family is meant to be a source of strength, a source of encouragement, a source of love. But not all family fulfills this divine purpose. God's wisdom gives you the ability to identify the danger, to understand the influence, and to respond with clarity. He says, do not be naive. Do not ignore the signs. Do not allow love alone to blind you. True love sometimes requires distance. True wisdom sometimes requires discernment. True destiny sometimes requires courage. And when you act in alignment with God's guidance, even when it is uncomfortable, even when it is painful, even when it goes against human emotion, you will find that God's peace becomes your shield, His clarity becomes your compass, and His favor becomes your constant companion. So examine your family dynamics. Recognize the criticizers, the manipulators, the destructive influences, the energy vampires, the jealous relatives, the liars and the oppressors. Pray for them, yes, but protect yourself. Set boundaries. Guard your heart. Walk in wisdom. Walk in discernment. Walk in obedience to the voice of God that calls you higher, calls you deeper, and calls you into a destiny that cannot be compromised by anyone, even family. For God has placed greatness inside of you, and no one, not even the closest blood relative, has the right to derail that purpose. You are not called to compromise your peace, to sacrifice your calling, or to endure perpetual toxicity. You are called to rise. You are called to lead. You are called to live a life that reflects the fullness of God's plan. And as you step away from those who hinder you, you will discover that God's provision, protection, and favor are closer than ever before. You will walk in light where there was darkness. You will experience freedom where there was bondage. You will move with confidence where there was doubt. And you will realize that sometimes staying away is not rejection. It is wisdom. It is protection. It is obedience. And it is the key to unlocking the destiny God has designed for your life. And understand this, the path to discerning who to keep close and who to distance yourself from is not always obvious. Sometimes the danger comes disguised in generosity, in smiles, in words of encouragement. The manipulator may act as if they are guiding you, but their guidance is a leash disguised as a blessing. The criticizer may speak with a tone of concern, but underneath lies a plan to keep you small. God's wisdom tells us that appearances can be deceiving, and discernment is the skill that separates those who walk in destiny from those who stumble in confusion. Consider the person who constantly borrows but never returns. Not money alone, but time, energy, ideas. They may be family, but they drain the very essence of your life. These are the energy vampires I mentioned earlier. They will leave you exhausted and frustrated, yet you may feel guilty for even thinking of walking away. The truth is, walking away from constant depletion is not selfish, it is spiritual stewardship. You are managing the life God has entrusted to you, and part of stewardship is recognizing when the influence of others is toxic. Then there is the sibling, cousin, or even parent who envies your success. They smile when you smile, but inside they are calculating how to pull you back into mediocrity. This type of family member may attempt to undermine your progress subtly, sowing seeds of doubt in others about you, questioning your decisions, or even instigating conflict in ways that seem innocent. God warns that envy left unchecked can become sabotage. Protect your vision, protect your progress, and never feel guilty for pursuing excellence while others cling to stagnation. And what about the one who betrays trust? Perhaps they disclose personal information, spread false stories, or use knowledge about you to manipulate situations. Betrayal from a family member is one of the most painful lessons because we expect loyalty from those closest to us. But God's wisdom is clear. Betrayal is a warning. It is a signal to step back, to guard your life, to recognize that your destiny cannot be entrusted to those who do not respect its sacredness. Protect your heart, protect your calling, and do not allow betrayal to derail your trajectory. There is also the oppressor, the one who imposes rules, opinions, or standards upon your life as though their perspective is the only one that matters. Perhaps they want to control your career choices, your relationships, or even your spiritual journey. Their love, if it can be called that, is conditional upon obedience to their vision, not your God-given purpose. God warns that control is spiritual oppression, and no calling, no gift, no talent can flourish under oppression. And by the way, God warns that control is spiritual oppression, and no calling, no gift, no talent can flourish under oppression. And by the way, God warns that control is spiritual oppression, and no calling, no gift, no talent can flourish under oppression. Sometimes you must distance yourself, even if temporarily, to allow space for your life to breathe and grow. And yet, within all of these warnings, there is a balance that must be maintained. Walking away from destructive influences is not a license to harbor hatred. It is not an excuse to judge. It is an exercise in wisdom. Pray for them. Speak blessings over their lives, but protect your peace, protect your destiny, protect your calling, because the higher you rise, the more sensitive you become to those who cannot celebrate your ascent. Let me tell you a story. I know of a young man full of dreams, full of potential, surrounded by family who loved him but constantly questioned his decisions. Every choice he made, there was someone who doubted him, someone who criticized him, someone who sought to manipulate him. For a while, he tried to please everyone. He tried to meet every expectation, and for a time, it worked. He was exhausted, frustrated, yet not moving closer to his dream. Then he decided to step back from the voices that tried to control him. He prayed for them, set boundaries, and focused on God's instructions for his life. Within a short time, doors opened that had been closed for years. Opportunities appeared that he had not even imagined. His peace was restored. His confidence flourished. And he realized that God's warnings were not restrictions. They were keys to unlocking his potential. You see, God's design for your life is precise. Every decision you make, every person you allow into your inner circle, affects the trajectory of your destiny. Family can be a blessing, yes, but they can also be a test. They can be a challenge, a distraction, or even a threat if you are not discerning. The Spirit of God is alive in you to guide you, to alert you, and to protect you from influences that are incompatible with your calling. When God speaks through your spirit, listen. Do not justify, rationalize, or ignore the warning. Obedience to God's voice is more valuable than comfort, more valuable than approval, more valuable than family approval. And recognize the subtlety of these influences. They do not always appear as obvious threats. The criticizer may be dressed in love. The manipulator may wear the mask of wisdom. The envious relative may smile and nod. But inside there is a spirit of competition and comparison that seeks to limit your growth. The liar may speak only half-truths, weaving deception in ways that are difficult to detect. And the oppressor may insist they know what is best for you, hiding control under concern. God says, discernment is the armor of the wise, and those who walk in my purpose must wear it every day. It is also important to understand timing. Not all family members need to be completely removed from your life. Some require distance. Some require boundaries. Some require careful management. God's wisdom is not about permanent rejection, but about preservation. It is about knowing when to step back, when to set limits, when to protect your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. There is a season for engagement and a season for separation, and recognizing the difference is the mark of spiritual maturity. And while you walk this path of discernment, cultivate a spirit of prayer for those you distance yourself from. Pray for their transformation, for their understanding, and for their own alignment with God's purpose. Spiritual protection is enhanced by spiritual intercession. The enemy thrives on broken relationships, and often God allows you to maintain distance so that healing rather than destruction can take place. Your obedience, your discernment, and your courage in maintaining boundaries are not only acts of self-preservation, they are acts of faith, aligning your life with God's order and purpose. Every step you take toward protecting your peace and preserving your destiny is a step in faith. Faith is not merely believing, it is acting in accordance with what God has revealed. It is the courage to stand firm when it is uncomfortable, to walk away when it is unpopular, and to maintain integrity when compromise is offered as the easier path. Your life is too valuable, your calling too sacred, and your potential too great to be hindered by toxic family dynamics. Now consider the way envy operates within families. It is subtle, but it is deadly. The envious relative will congratulate you, but their heart is heavy with resentment. They may not openly oppose you, but they will subtly undermine your confidence. They will share half-truths to make you question your choices. They will remind you of your failures and obscure your victories. God warns us that envy can be more dangerous than open hostility because it disguises itself as concern. And when left unchecked, envy can become a chain that binds you, preventing you from stepping fully into the blessings and opportunities that are rightfully yours. The manipulator, on the other hand, is patient and strategic. They know how to make you feel obligated to their expectations. They know how to create confusion so that you constantly second-guess your decisions. God warns that the manipulator thrives on uncertainty and distraction. They want to pull your focus from your destiny and redirect it to serving their agenda. Sometimes the most powerful act of obedience to God is to recognize manipulation and create boundaries, even if it is difficult emotionally. Remember, boundaries are not walls of hatred. They are shields of wisdom. The liar and betrayer often operate under the guise of loyalty. They pretend to have your back while secretly plotting against your progress. Betrayal can be devastating because it comes from a place where trust should be sacred. But God's wisdom reminds us that betrayal is not the end of the road. It is a signal to protect the things that matter most: your calling, your peace, and your integrity. You cannot allow repeated betrayal to become a pattern that derails your life. Learning to distance yourself, to limit exposure, and to guard your secrets is not cold-hearted, it is practical, spiritual protection. Then there's the control freak, the family member who insists that life must follow their rules. They dictate your choices, weigh in on every decision, and make you feel as if obedience to them is more important than obedience to God. These are dangerous dynamics because they can distort your perception of freedom, independence, and purpose. God's warning is clear. No one has the authority to override His plan for your life. Not even a parent, sibling, or spouse. When you allow oppression disguises care to influence your decisions, you compromise your destiny. You must learn to assert your spiritual authority, to stand firm in faith, and to move forward with the confidence that God's plan will prevail over human interference. Energy vampires are often underestimated. They may appear harmless, even charming, but their constant demands slowly deplete your resources. They take more than they give, and they rarely acknowledge the effort you expend for them. God warns that you must manage your time, energy, and resources wisely. The gifts, talents, and opportunities God has entrusted to you are sacred, and allowing someone to drain them will stunt your progress. Protect your energy. Guard your peace. Be generous, yes, but not at the expense of your own calling. Even the seemingly supportive family members can harbor subtle threats. The one who constantly advises you may appear well-meaning, but their advice may carry bias, fear, or self-interest. God warns that even advice must be filtered through discernment. Not every word from a familiar voice is aligned with your destiny. Listen, evaluate, and pray. Ask God for clarity before accepting counsel, especially when it contradicts the nudges of your spirit or the vision He has placed in your heart. And in all of this, it is critical to understand the spiritual principle of distance without hatred. Protecting yourself does not mean rejecting family entirely. It means creating boundaries where necessary. It means walking in wisdom, not emotion. It means learning that love sometimes looks like walking away. Sometimes looks like saying no. Sometimes looks like withholding yourself from harm. God's protection is often exercised through careful distance. It is not abandonment, it is preservation. It is the discipline of choosing what is good for your soul over what is comfortable for your heart. Stories of people who followed God's warnings illustrate this principle clearly. I know a woman who had a family member constantly undermining her career and reputation. For years, she tried to explain, convince, and please this relative. The tension drained her spiritually, emotionally, and mentally. One day, she prayed for wisdom and realized God was showing her that protection required distance. She set firm boundaries, limited interaction, and focused on her calling. Within months, her work flourished, her peace returned, and the influence of this toxic relationship was diminished. The lesson is clear. God's warnings are protective, and obedience to them unlocks freedom and growth. You must also consider the spiritual consequences of ignoring these warnings. God is not punishing you by asking you to maintain distance. He is preserving your life from unnecessary harm. The criticizer can lead you into doubt and fear. The manipulator can lead you into confusion and wasted effort. The envious relative can lead you into resentment or retaliation. The liar can damage your reputation and compromise trust. The oppressor can steal your independence and distort your purpose. By heeding God's warnings, you safeguard not only your present but your future. The art of discernment is learned over time. You will make mistakes, misjudge intentions, and feel the weight of emotions tied to family loyalty. But each experience, each trial, is an opportunity to sharpen your spiritual awareness. God's guidance is consistent. Love deeply, forgive freely, but protect wisely. Protect your heart, your calling, and your destiny. Protect the peace God has promised you. And remember, distancing yourself from toxic family members does not prevent you from being a blessing. You can still pray for them, you can still speak positively, and you can still desire their transformation. The act of setting boundaries is not incompatible with love. It is love in action, for yourself and for them. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give a family member is a model of healthy boundaries, integrity, and faithfulness to God's calling. Think about the way some family members subtly try to limit your potential under the guise of concern. They may say, "Be careful," or "Maybe that isn't for you." But behind their words is fear. Fear that you will surpass them. Fear that your success will highlight their failures. Fear that your destiny will reveal their limitations. God warns us to recognize fear dressed as advice. You cannot allow someone else's fear to become the chains that bind your vision. Every step you take toward your purpose is an act of faith. And faith requires discernment. The criticizer who constantly points out flaws often does so because they are trapped in their own limitations. They have not learned to see beyond the immediate. They are stuck in fear, regret, and resentment. God warns you to not adopt their perspective as your reality. Your calling, your gifts, and your potential are not determined by the criticism of others, no matter how close they are to you. Learn to listen to constructive wisdom, yes, but reject constant negativity that seeks to undermine your confidence and cloud your vision. Manipulators are strategic in their methods. They will create obligations that are unnecessary, guilt that is undeserved, and pressure that is unholy. They want to entangle your life in their web so that your energy, your focus, and your spirit are consumed by their agenda instead of God's plan for you. God's instruction is clear. Do not be entangled by obligations that distract from your divine assignment. Obedience to His calling requires clarity, courage, and at times, the difficult decision to step away. Consider also the energy vampires who constantly demand your attention, whether through emotional crises, constant complaints, or perpetual neediness. God reminds us that our energy is sacred, that our spiritual focus is precious, and that our purpose cannot flourish in constant exhaustion. Generosity is a virtue, but when generosity becomes self-sacrifice to the point of depletion, it ceases to be blessing and becomes burden. Protect your energy, conserve your peace, direct your gifts toward growth and not toward endless drain. Even within the family unit, jealousy can manifest in ways that are subtle yet destructive. It may show up in backhanded compliments, in comparisons, or in constant reminders of your failures. The envious relative may never attack you outright, but they create an environment of doubt and insecurity. God warns that jealousy can obstruct the flow of blessings. You must guard your heart against comparison, against resentment, and against the subtle sabotage of those who cannot rejoice over your progress. Your joy, your success, and your fulfillment are sacred gifts from God, and you are responsible for protecting them. The liar and betrayer often operate in silence until damage is done. Sometimes you may not see it coming until the consequences are visible. Trust broken, relationships strained, reputation questioned. God warns that betrayal is not always obvious, and discernment is required to navigate these dynamics. Protect your life, your relationships, and your calling by recognizing patterns of deceit and taking proactive steps to guard yourself. Spiritual awareness is the key to navigating these complexities while remaining in alignment with God's plan. Oppressors within the family are relentless in their efforts to dominate your choices. They impose opinions as if they carry divine authority, dictating decisions about your career, relationships, and even your spiritual life. God warns that freedom in His purpose is non-negotiable.